Hello, my name is Jared Lipinski, and welcome to the VISI 2026 Quarter 1 release update. In this presentation, we will be reviewing new features from VISI 2025.2 and VISI 2025.4. So, let's start with our support and services. We offer on-site and web training support, and here's our help desk contact information. You can reach us by phone 248-255-4348, by email tst.support.mi@hexagon.com, or via the Hexagon customer portal. There's also the Hexagon Nexus portal, which allows you access to different knowledge bases such as a forums page and a help page to give you information about the software. And we offer technical support days like webinars and seminars such as this, with an unmatched level of support and services. So let's get into our technical support services. So we offer in-person or web days to assist you in any needs for the VISI software. For example, with VISI 2025.4 coming out, these days can be customized to your specifications. We can also do services such as installation and training of the new software. We can help you with transferring your tool libraries from version to version or computer to computer. The same thing is true with your tool settings and custom components. These days can be used as well for training classes too, such as for modeling and machining. So call us if you're interested. Again, our contact information is at the bottom part of the screen. So let's get into the agenda for today's presentation. We're going to start out with the translators for import and export. We'll go into user interface and selection, assembly manager, modeling, electrode, mold and flow, progress, and machining. So let's start out with the import translators. You'll see highlighted in green the changes that have been done with 2025.4. So a couple key things to highlight with this is you now have the ability of importing in Fusion 360 files. Of course, the Parasolid libraries have been updated, and same thing for SolidWorks, and many, many more. So I'll leave this page up for just a second here, and then we'll go on to the exports. So now, with the export translators, you'll see, of course, as mentioned before, the Parasolid libraries have been updated to version 37. And you can see how there's been some updates to the CATIA translators as well as Unigraphics. We'll start with the user interface and selection area. So, to begin, we're going to go over the Universal Updater. When you install 2025.4, the Universal Updater will automatically be installed as well. This will notify you if there's any changes, any new updates, patches, full releases that are available within the software. It'll automatically let you launch the Hexagon customer portal to be able to install and download these. So no longer are you relying on a manual email from us to let you know that there is an update. And within attributes and visibility, you now have a back and forward button to be able to go back and forward through the attributes and visibilities whenever you're hiding and enabling something within visibilities. And within large preview, under the File Explorer, it now shows a larger file preview of the file you're trying to open before you even open it. When you're highlighting internal commands, it will now show in parentheses the short key that will activate those commands. For example, in these images, you will see M for move for the translation command, C for copy, and I to toggle on and off incremental translation. And within layer, there's been some name changes to the layering structure. So for example, add elements to layer is now called move copy elements to layer. When it comes to insert lines, there's now insert line, insert more lines, and move layers as well. And you have remove lines and remove more lines. This makes it easier for navigating within the layer management. And in the video, we're going to highlight some of the features that are available within 2025.4. In this section, we're going to review layers and filtering, a crucial part of sorting through a mold or a die. We will start with the visibility arrows. This is within attributes and visibilities where I can enable, disable certain things from being visible and what is not visible. So you can see how I'm doing a cluster of different things, making things visible and invisible. Then I'll go ahead and hide a few things. And the new features are the select visibility arrows where I can go back and forward through that step-by-step process. Now we're going to go into layer management where we have insert and remove lines. So you can see how there's the insert lines option right here. I can insert an individual line, or I can select insert more lines where I can specify how many lines I'm going to insert in here. If I hit OK, it's going to insert those lines as spaces. The same thing is possible with remove lines. You can see how if I right click and say remove lines, it will select it. And then if I go to remove more lines, it automatically detects the gap, and it will remove the lines specified. As an alternative to the Elements environment, we have Select Elements within Layer Management. You can select the elements specifically for all the layers that are enabled, or select elements on a specific layer to enable them. This allows you, for anything involving an Elements environment, have these items already selected. Now I'll talk about layer groups. You have the ability, using these arrow keys, to be able to move layers up and down in the order. This allows you to customize the ordering of it after the layer group's already created. It is also possible to use these checkboxes to turn on and off layers. This avoids you having to hit the Control key or Shift key to be able to turn on multiple layer groups. Next, we'll talk about layer colors, which is a filtering option for being able to filter through your file by color to indicate what layers or layer groups a part is a part of. So in this case, we're right-clicking on a group and we're selecting Edit Group. So if I go to select that group, it changes all the layers that are a part of that group to a specific color. We can then use a specific filter to be able to turn on and off that layer color on the model, so you can differentiate what colors are a part of what groups. This can also be done individually per layer as well by selecting the layer color itself and changing that individual layer. As you can see, when we reactivate that color, you can see the color changes for that specific layer. When you're working in the layer management, it is also possible to now customize the columns. You can see there's a dialog box right here where you can turn on and off a specific filter. You can see how we can hide the color field in here. And if I customize that column again, bringing that color field back in, I could change the order of where that color field actually is, and you can see it show up right there in the column. I can also move it up and down if I choose to. Inside the Layer Manager as well, I can use the search and replace functions. When I click on search and replace, I can search for a keyword, for example CV for cavity, and I can hit OK, and it filters to see all that data that has that name CV in it. I can also say replace that CV with the name cavity. So if I type in cavity here, it will change CV to cavity for all of those different things in the list. And lastly, we're going to show the elements to layer options. This is a fast way of quickly moving one item from one layer to another. So if I right click on the layer, I can select Move Copy Elements to Layer. I can choose to move it or copy it. Copy retains that item on the original layer and puts a copy on the new layer I specified. For example, you can see how that item is in the original layer and the copied layer. As an alternative, just to show this, I'm going to change the color of this item so you can see the difference between the two. Now we're going to talk about what's new within the Assembly Manager. We'll start with Merge Fields. It's now possible to merge fields into one field, pretty much the opposite of what a splitter does, and this allows for the quick visualization of multiple fields when you export a file and import it into another software. And now to managing multiple prefixes. It is now possible to add a letter prefix for a position number within the bill of material. Updating function values to the default settings. So when you right-click any entity inside the parts list, you have this Update Functions Value to Default Settings option. This will allow you to update all of what is selected to whatever function that field is associated to. And then within family names, it is now possible to add the family names for merged field functions within the entity selection as well. BOM table updating. When you have a table that's associated to your bill of material, let's say something changes within your parts list, your table will now update. It is no longer a need to delete and re-add the table to see updates change. Keep position number during merge. When you are exporting out a VISI file and merging it into an existing file, the position numbers will now retain. And within the body name information, extra fields for the body name are now available within Note when you're importing in files. And in the video, we're going to highlight new features within the Assembly Manager. In this video, we're going to talk about fundamental enhancements that have been improved on for the Assembly Manager. We'll start with the Automatic Confirm Values option. So, when you're updating fields inside of the Assembly Manager, it is no longer required for you to hit the Confirm button. This makes it easier for being able to update values, and ensures if you do swap between fields, your values that you've input in don't get lost. Notice in materials, when editing the field, the weight command is built right in. You can choose a weight right from this list, which is the weight CFG, or manually enter your own values. If you do input in from this list, it will add the weight in automatically. As mentioned before, there is no checkbox to have to confirm the value. So for example, if I do switch to another entity to edit, you don't lose the data from that original entity. It is possible to go back to the old way of doing this by going into settings here and unchecking the automatic confirm values. If you uncheck this value, the green check marks will appear and it requires you to right click to apply. Now we're going to talk about field visibility with regards to the bill of material. You see all these empty fields that are in our default list here for the properties that we can input values for. These don't show up in my bill of material. For example, if I go to the table, you can see the visible rows within the bill of material. These are controlled by the settings area right here and templates. Everything that's checked will show up in the bill of material, which is that table that you see at the bottom. There's an option inside of the parts list area to enable and disable visible rows based on the bill of material properties. And continuing with the bill of material, we're going to talk about automatic table editing. So if I make a change to one of my fields, you'll see that the table's going to edit. So I'm going to start with this cover one, which I'm just going to search for using the find function. We'll search cover, and it should find that right in our field area. If I go into here and I change the name of that description where cover is located to, let's say, cavity, you will see that it's going to automatically update my table with that information. No longer are you required to delete the table to be able to see these changes. Now we're going to talk about the merge fields function. So we have all these properties available for each of these fields, and we want to group them together into one field. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create that field. I can right-click fields and select add field. I'm going to create a field named merge data, and this is going to be the field I'm going to merge that information to. I'll go ahead and confirm this. And then here's my merge data field. I'm going to go to the create values area, and I'm going to go to the functions dropdown. In addition to the merge fields, there's also the bounding box field, automatic, layers, mass properties, weight, and of course merge fields, which is what we're going to select. So within merge fields, we choose the fields we're going to specifically merge. For example, right here, you can see the available fields. We're going to select the description, the material, and we'll also choose the code here. So these fields are going to be selected. I'm going to put an underscore between each one as a separator. So when you merge this in, it's going to have that extra field in there as a separator. So upon hitting OK here, you will see that information update in the merge data area. Now we're going to update the sum criteria, which is a default visibility field. So you can see how we go to the entities area. We're going to find that merge data field, and we're going to go ahead and hit the checkbox to confirm. You can see that is now the visible field. This is important when it comes to exporting files to be able to see the assemblies in another program. So now they're in the assembly view. This is important for setup. We got to select the part and add it to our assembly. This is how we can import data into other programs. So now we're going to export this out as a step file. And then in properties, we're going to ensure we select this to by assemblies. So that way the exported data comes through when we import this into another product. For example, I have eDrawings, which is a SolidWorks-based product. I'm going to go ahead and import that step file into here. And when it loads, we're going to go into the component area of eDrawings. Within here, you'll see that assembly show up. This is the exact name that I labeled it in VISI. And the last thing we're going to talk about here is the add function for automatic population of field values. So we're looking at our layer management. We're going to create a field named layers, and we're going to use a function to automatically populate the data of the layers within the assembly manager field. So here we're creating the field named layers. We're going to go ahead and select this area, and you can see here's where we can start adding functions. In addition to functions, we can also add prefix values. So this is where you can add values in, so that way you look at it in a dropdown, these values are auto-populated. So let's go to add function. Like what we talked about before, we have our functions here, and we're going to go ahead and select layer. You can choose what type of function within the layer, whether you want the name, the index number and name, and so on. We'll just choose layer here, and go ahead and select confirm. When I select all my entities, I can go ahead and say update values, and it will automatically update everything here. If I say yes, it's going to go through the process and update that layer for each one of those items automatically. For example, if the layer name changes, you will see the change take effect here too. Now let's review what's new within modeling. We'll start with the offset hollow bodies. If the offset hollow bodies fails for any reason, there will be an error message that pops up, and it will highlight the areas that cause the issue. So it makes it easier to identify problems when using the offset hollow bodies. And with an auto constraint, you now have the ability to use the command to drive multi-shape. This opens up a wider avenue of surface areas that you can complete with auto constraint. And cage morphing is a new command that was introduced within the Advanced Modeling License module. This command makes it possible to be able to change the model based on free points, allowing you to manipulate and morph your model to whatever it needs to be. Within solid interference, you now have the ability of controlling the tolerance of the interference. This will allow you to prevent false collisions. And within nesting parts, you now have the ability to save the defaults for a future use of the command. And for split lines, it is now possible to remove lines from the split area within an incremental manner. It is also possible to give different colors for different areas of your part as well. So for example, each lifter, each slide could have its own unique color. And within the face selection, you now can pick a direction for that slide or lifter to move when you're splitting the part. In the video, we're going to show some examples of some of the new stuff within modeling. In this example, we're going to highlight key new features that are available within the modeling side for the VISI software. So we'll start with Splitline. Splitline makes it really easy for you to be able to split your core and cavity plates from the part. It will extract a surface off of them and split it into different groups. So as you can see, right now it splits this along the Z for creating the core and cavities. It will try to detect any kind of slides or lifters in here as well, which you can see by the faces, and we can set unique colors for those slides and lifters that you're going to have within the mold. In addition to setting colors for these, you can also set process directions for where they're going to go. So if I go to this face set right here and select a direction, I can pick an edge on the part and then choose the direction from that edge. That will create that section so it's going to go in relevance to the direction I specified. So you can see how when I do my slider, it is sliding in and out from that process direction. Now we'll move on to cage morphing. Cage morphing is a tool that makes it really easy to manipulate a CAD model. So if I select cage morphing here, I select the solid part I want to manipulate. It's then going to create a caged point set that I can easily manipulate. So as you can see, here's the cage set, and it's defaulting for X, Y, Z to be 4 points on all sides. I can manipulate this so that way, let's say I can have 10 points in X, 10 points in Y, and 10 points in Z. And you'll see the manipulation real quick here too. This allows you to set more constraints for the manipulation of the cage morphing. So I'm going to go ahead and select a certain point set here. When I select that point set, I can choose which direction I want those to morph. So in this case, I'm bending these all up. And it's using some extra technology in the background to manipulate that. I've repeated this process before confirming in 2 other spots. So as you can see, here is our existing solid. You can see how it puts it back with the same color attributes, same style. And if I highlight it, it's highlighting as one entity. Please note that advanced modeling is required to use this command. A huge enhancement completed in recent versions involves the solid interference command. If I select this cavity plate with a bunch of components in it, I may get some false collisions. These false collisions are based on a very tight tolerance. Within solid interference, it is now possible to control the tolerance you want it to be set to. In this case, we set this to 1 thou, and you can see how there's no collisions there because we can control the plus or minus tolerance. And now let's talk about electrode and what is new within electrode. So we'll start with solid group creation for electrode. It is now possible to create an electrode stock off of a tip that is not planar. This can be done with solid or surface data. Within stock definition, there is a new module called reinforcement. This reinforcement allows you to create an additional part on the geometry to reinforce the electrode when you have a particularly thin area. You can define the dimensions for the reinforcement as separate values if needed as well, and in the video we're going to showcase these features. In this section we're going to talk about some new features within the electrode package for non-planar stock and reinforcement. We'll start with non-planar tooltip creation for the electrodes. I'm going to start off by extracting the surfaces off the electrodes here, knitting the sheet bodies, so that way I have the faces for what are going to become my electrode. I'm then going to isolate those faces out. With those faces being isolated, I'm now going to go ahead and select the Extrude Elements command to be able to extrude them in a direction. I'm going to use block control with the boundary selection. I'm going to select all of these at one time to be able to do the extrusion. Extrude them off to a certain distance, and then I'm going to go ahead and confirm. Observe that none of these surfaces are at the same Z height. I didn't have to trim them. But it still will create that stock creation even with that said. It's going to create it instantly off of the entirety of the electrode itself. Now we'll talk about stock reinforcement within stock definitions. I'm going to create an electrode using the tip creation option, and I'm going to go ahead and reference the insert as well as the piece. And I'm going to create this tip via a bounding box. In this situation, the tip is going to be very, very tall and very, very brittle. So what we can do with this is I'm going to confirm the tip at a smaller size. And then within the stock definition, I'm going to go ahead and create my stock. And that's where I'm going to apply an extra reinforcement to this. So I'm picking the tip. I'm going to pick the workpiece and the insert. And you can see how it defaults to stock. I'm going to go ahead and use a custom size here. So a preset bounding box size I have, I'm going to go 1x2. And you can see how it changes that size there. And obviously, you can see how there's collision. That's where I can apply some reinforcement to this. I'm going to go ahead and hit the checkbox to add a unique width, height, and depth for the reinforcement. And I'm going to just change the size of it a little bit. These sizes can be set manually or automatically. I'm just typing in a value here. You can see I can change that height of that reinforced stock. And with these values, I'm going to change the sizes so they prevent collision between the reinforcement and the workpiece. Mold and flow. We'll start with warpage compensation. Warpage compensation uses the same mesh technology as cage morphing we talked about earlier for creating an almost instantaneous deformation. Thermal temperature of core and cavity plates. To enable a designer to better analyze the different areas of a core and cavity block during the molding process, there has been added a feature to show a color map for the temperature of the steel that goes around the plastic. In thermal analysis, this option is called Draw Voxels. And now we're going to talk about progress. We'll start with Part Extract Edit Skin. This command allows for support for editing multiple surfaces immediately after the extract skin operation is activated. This improvement allows for solids to be created from multiple skins in a single action, and simplifies the modeling process and reduces the number of manual steps required. When selecting a surface, it is now possible to set up a relative thickness direction. And for step unfolding, the attached geometry option for 2D or 3D objects during the step unfolding is now available. In this step unfolding command, particularly when extracted skins are activated. And now we'll move on to Part VISI Blank. Rectangle profiles around the blanked area are now visible by activating this checkbox, Show Minimum Bounding Box Profile. The user can now set the orientation for the blank profile by default for the system calculation. So the display right now is minimum bounding box, but can be switched to the profile calculation by the X or the Y planes. If the user selects blank holder force, the information has been added to the HTML report, text report, and Excel report. And within the part unfolding options, a new option has been added for unfolding directions, so you could do the negative X or the positive X, allowing for more consistent, simplified unfolding operations. And also, additionally to this, there is an option to be able to set the defaults for the blank visualizations. In this area, we're going to highlight new key features within the Progress dropdown. We'll start with the actual dropdown itself. You can see how the dropdown has changed and been revamped in the recent version here. And as you can see, all your part unfolding options are in this dropdown. Circular draw and flange on a curve is in other unfolding. Strip study is by itself. You have multi-stage simulation. You have the spring back options. tool design for all your tool design needs, and then other commands like our classic VISI blank command, and set solid parts. We'll start with part extract edit skin. This has replaced the extract skin option that was in previous versions. So the command works very similarly, and if not the same, as the extract skin. And if I select this face right here, the interface has been modified and updated. So as you can see, there's a translation value there, so you can input an XYZ where you want that to be positioned. That's where you assign your materials to it, and your grade of material, as well as the thickness value for what this is going to select. So you can also add and remove faces off of this as well. Now we're going to talk about part VISI blank. This feature has been modified from the older VISI blank, which, as mentioned before, is still in the software under other commands. If I select the part, you'll see the interface shows up with a preview option here at the bottom. All the other options are relatively similar. For example, the materials, the mesh type, your constraints, pressure pad force, blank holder force, and then all your binding options, mapping edges, and so on. You get your thinning properties, you get your animation properties as well. And if I hit preview, you will see that it generates a blank relatively similar to like it did before. As you can see, you get your shade options here. Turning on the thinning results, you can see how it automatically uses that drop-down to display the thinning results as well. And then you have safety zones, which displays if there's going to be any kind of wrinkle tendencies within the sheet metal. And if I select the animation pane, you can see how you can export an MP4 file out. It will export a nice clean video file out if you want to set a recording for this as well. Now we're going to talk about step unfolding. This command has replaced the linear flange unfolding from previous versions. So, as you can see, if I go ahead and show step unfolding here, we're going to show how to unfold this area, which has multiple linear flanges inside of that area. So, if I go to part analysis, I'm going to select my holding face, and let it try to scan and pick up those features. You'll see that you've got two linear bends in that specific area, and if I go to step unfolding, it's possible to unfold those the same exact way we did with linear flange. So if I go ahead and select the faces environment here, technically I could select the edges environment to unfold this as well, but you can see if I select the face environment, you see how it unfolds this feature. I could put in a different bend angle, and you'll see that it's going to add that different bend angle to that area. I'll go ahead and confirm this, and if I select that same face group again, I can then add another die station as well to be able to unfold this as well. Now we're going to talk about what's new within machining. We'll start with shade rendering. The 9 and the 0 key can be used to activate the shade rendering for parts in Cam Navigator. For example, the 0 key allows you to toggle the feature shading, so the feature will appear as wireframe or shading by toggling the 0 key. The 9 key allows you to toggle between standard highlight and the new highlight functions. So the way the new highlight functions work is everything is grayed out except for whatever's selected in your Cam Navigator, such as a piece, a stock, or an obstacle. Regarding that standard highlight, it is possible to set that as a default through the CAM settings within the machining dropdown. You just go to the user interface defaults and select standard highlight. Within the operation menu, it is possible to see all of the operations. If, based on the selection that you're choosing, the operation is not possible to select, there will be a lock icon right next to the operation. And within the operation menus, the options are now in tabbed areas. For example, post-processor will be where you change your speeds and feeds for each specific operation, and you'll notice that there's a tooltip option within each individual parameter to tell you what it does. Now we're going to talk about the roughing hybrid options. This option has replaced the older roughing hybrid operation, and some key points to focus on between this operation and the older one are as followed: better arc fitting, more optimized tool pathing, freeform cutting support, dynamic collision check, retraction step-down controls, and micro lift and back passes. So, as you can see as well, based on these images, that the newer roughing hybrid passing is a lot faster than the older one as well. With the new hybrid option, the calculation is based on the actual tool profile, and not a theoretical equivalent profile as the older roughing hybrid. This detail is very important since the calculation is based on the shape of the cutter and its position closer to the workpiece, and therefore removes more material from the part, drastically reducing the rust roughing phase. There are some new linking methods as well for smoother cutting paths. The S-link cuts in both directions, causing chatter. This option prevents that, and you can see the results here on the side. Now we're going to talk about corner remachining. There's a new step-down parameter to control the distance between the passes on the steep areas. Within contouring methods, there are 3 new methods for cutting these types of movements, such as split center, follow center, and morph to center. Each of these changes how the cutter reacts to the steep and shallow areas. And within global finishing, side allowance values are now in the calculation. The expanded value is no longer required, and now, when you use the past, the default is now maintained for consistency within other 3-axis strategies as well. This program allowance is also considered. So in the video, we're going to highlight some of these new key features. Within this section, we are going to highlight some of the new features for CAM in recent versions, from the interface changes to roughing and finishing operations. We will start out with highlight coloring. Pressing the 9 key, you can turn on the original model colors. By default, the colors will appear as gray when you activate the CAM navigator, except for whatever is highlighted within your selection of the tree. So as you can see, when we pick the object, it shows up with a color for the highlight and everything else appears gray. Very similar to this, if I press 0, it enables the feature highlight. So toggling 0 turns that on and off from outline. Add operation, although similar, has also changed a little bit. It now displays all of the active operations, and if it's not an operation that's selectable in this circumstance, it'll show a lock symbol next to it. Within the operation interface, you will see everything is divided up into tabs as well. Observe the Post-Processor tab. This is a new tab that allows you to edit the speeds and feeds specifically for an individual operation. If there's a tool change, you can use the Update Cutting Conditions to be able to edit that cutting condition to the new tool. Continuing with the operations menus, including wire, there is a tooltip help menu. For each individual item you select, it's going to give you different information in this tooltip menu to explain what that specific area is doing for the operation. Next, we'll talk about Global Roughing Hybrid, and the new enhancements that have been added within this module compared to the original. You'll see in this instance, based on the same parameters, that the Roughing Hybrid for the new operation builds a lot faster than the old operation. Observe the operations do look a little different compared to each other, and the prediction for the speed at the machine is shorter for the new Roughing Hybrid operation compared to the old. Now we'll compare the 2 cutter paths in Toolpath Lab. We're going to start with the old operation, and you can see how the cutter path is going to show up based on the different steps in the ordering. Then, if we go to the new cutter path, you'll see that this takes a completely different approach to how it's going to rough out the operation. If I turn on the segments and arcs, you can see how there's more arc support within the new operation versus the old operation. So you can see the pink is our arc here, and this is going to create a smoother cutter path in comparison to the older operation, which has more segments and point-to-point operations. With the said in the posted code, you'll see more G2 and G3 operations in the new hybrid operation comparison to the old. So here's a side-by-side of the post comparisons, and you will see a lot more G2s and G3s within the post. Here's just a few highlighted in the operation comparisons. Finally, with roughing, we will show the incremental step-downs. Using the retract step-down within the operation menu, you can create some independence within the step-downs for blended areas. So you can have a smaller step down based on certain areas of your model. So if I rebuild this operation, you will see the completed operation have a smaller step down based on the blended area comparison to the side walls. Moving to global finishing, this new operation allows you to combine steep and shallow areas into one finishing operation. In Add Operation, I will select global finishing. Then, I'm going to choose my tool, which in this case will be a 3/4 inch bullnose. As you can see, the operation looks very similar to most, but we have the slope management area. Within this area, I'm going to go ahead and leave machine slopes separately turned on. After that, I'm going to change my step down to be a bigger value, and then confirm. Once confirmed, we'll go ahead and build the operation. You will see when the operation is complete that it's going to combine your waterline for the steep walls and your raster for the shallow walls. And the machine slope area separate will subdivide the steep and shallow areas of the part. Looking at it in another view, you can see all the rapids that it's going to be creating as well. Now we're going to talk about max shallow angle. This value defines the threshold angle of the subdivided steep and shallow areas. So in this case, we're going to turn off machine slope separately and turn this on to 45 degrees. When I build the operation, you will see that it's going to change the results just a little bit in regards to how it's going to form the steep and shallow areas. For example, I'm going to edit this again. I'm going to change it from 45 to 90 just to see what the results are when we change that max shallow angle. You'll see the operation completely changes based on those parameters that we've changed for the slope and shallow angles. And thank you for watching. As discussed at the beginning, we're going to open up the floor to question and answer.